We're continuing now in the book of Numbers, and we saw in the first three parshas, we were talking about the encampment, how the Jewish people lived around the tabernacle, and then in parsha number 3, they began their journey towards the land of Israel. Now, typically in the crash course, we're going to focus on 3 or 4 parshas at a shot, but in this video, I want to focus on the events that happened in parsha number 4 alone, and that's the famous spy episode. That's when the nation wanted to send in 12 spies, one spy from each tribe, to check out the land. Now, it's important to realize it was the nation that wanted to send in the spies. God didn't tell them that they had to do that. In fact, there was no need to send in spies. They should have felt comfortable and secure that God has protected them all the way from their days in Egypt through the Red Sea, the events at Mount Sinai, and then how they've been living miraculously in the desert. So there's no need to be concerned. If he tells them to go into a land flowing with milk and honey, they should have just gone. But they were concerned, they were nervous, they didn't know what type of land it was going to be, who was living there, how they were going to take it over, and therefore they decided to send in the 12 spies. They come to Moses, Moses asks God, and God says, fine, but it's not necessary. They end up spending 40 days in the land of Israel checking things out, and they come back with these grapes, a huge cluster of grapes on poles. If you've ever been to Israel, you see on the Ministry of Tourism, you see these two people holding grapes, a big cluster. The land of Israel was obviously very fertile. They had pomegranates and figs as well. So they impressed the nation with how lush the land was. But 10 of the spies are negative. They say there's no way they're going to be able to take over the land. The people living there are well fortified in these cities. There are giants there. They felt like they were puny in their eyes. And only 2 of the spies, Joshua, who's from the tribe of Ephraim, and as you recall, he's one of the sons of Joseph, and Caleb, who's from the tribe of Judah, only those 2 are actually positive. And they try to convince the nation, no, in fact, they should go in. Just listen to God, things are going to be good. But the nation goes with the majority, unfortunately, in this case. They cry all night, and that night was the 9th day of the Jewish month of Av. In Hebrew, 9 is Tisha. So this is known as the holiday of Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, when they cried that night. And God said, on this night you cried over nothing. You should have felt absolutely secure. There was no reason to be afraid. And therefore, on this night, I'm going to give you something to cry about. And we're going to learn more about this in the crash course in Jewish history. But on this night of the 9th of Av, this is when the first temple of Jerusalem was destroyed by the Babylonians. It was when the second temple of Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans. The Jews were expelled from Spain on the 9th of Av, and other tragedies. World War I broke out on the 9th of Av. It's a day, unfortunately, of terrible tragedies, and we mark it with a full fast day. We actually fast, just like in Yom Kippur, we fast the same way on this day. God then decrees that they'll have to be in the desert for 40 years for that entire generation to be wiped out. Anybody who was over the age of 20 at this time who was a male will die when they reach the age of 60. The women never lost hope. They never lost their faith in the Almighty that he could bring them in securely. So the entire male population was wiped out, except for a few exceptions like Joshua and Caleb and so on. So the nation's going to have to now remain in the desert until that generation is gone. Now, when the nation hears that they've lost the opportunity to go into the land of Israel, they feel horrible. They try to repent, and they say, no, we're going to go in. We're going to take it over now. And Moses says, forget it. Don't even attempt it, because God is not in your midst. But they don't listen, and they are pounded in warfare by the Canaanites that live there and the Amaleki, a terrible nation that lives there as well, and they lose. At the very end of this parsha, the mitzvah, the commandment of tzitzis is given. Tzitzis are the fringes that are put on a 4-cornered garment that are worn by men. We're told that we're supposed to look at the tzitzis and to remember all of God's commandments, and we're not to spy after our eyes or our heart. Our eyes and our heart are always wandering. They're always trying to seek connection to things which aren't meaningful. They're superficial. They're only immediately gratifying, but nothing beyond that. And we're always supposed to look for the deeper connection through the commandments that we have the opportunity to fulfill. So the connection there is that we're not supposed to spy after our eyes and our heart, especially now we've seen what can happen with the spies here going into the land of Israel. So this is a terrible episode in the Jewish people's history. Many people think that the 40-year decree happened because of the golden calf. That's not so. When the golden calf episode happened back in the book of Exodus, those who participated were executed, but the Jewish people eventually got atonement for that sin. So that's a spy episode in a nutshell, which led to, historically, what we mark every year with the 9th day of Tisha B'Av. Okay, so let's begin with our review, and here we go. Parsha number 4 deals with the spy episode. The nation wanted to send in the 12 spies to check out the land. They're there for 40 days in the land of Israel. They come back with these big grapes, pomegranates, and figs, but 10 say there's no way they can go in. Only Joshua from Ephraim and Caleb from the tribe of Judah are positive. The nation cries that night. That night is the 9th day of Tisha B'Av. God decrees as a result 40 years in the desert they will not be allowed to enter the land. The nation repents, and they actually try to go in. Some of them try, but they're told there's no point. They end up losing, and at the very end of the Parsha, the commandment of tzitzis is given.